How's everybody? Oh, that was good. Thank you. It's not gas station sushi?
No.
Oh, thank you.
We're not trying to make you ill and then sick.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. How's everybody doing? Good?
Good.
Awesome. What we're going to do today is we're going to go over chapter 9, which is actually a pretty interesting chapter. It's over antiseptics and disinfectants. And it's how you control microorganisms in the environment. Did everybody get a study guide and a handout from last time? Because if you did not, I got extra. So feel free to come get extra if you need to. And thank you again for the little gift pass. That's really sweet. I do appreciate that. Okay, cool. And lab today will be fun. Lab is part 1 of your antibiotics lab, so I think you guys will like it. It's usually one of the more enjoyable labs of this semester. I had everything all set up for you. Last time we talked about the antimicrobial drugs. So those are like, well, you guys tell me, what are antimicrobial drugs?
Kill microbes.
They're high price, yes. They're the antibiotics, the antivirals, the antifungal agents, antiparasites. Now, any drug that basically fights a microorganism is an antimicrobial drug. And went over the different families and all that good stuff. Well, today we're talking about something a little different. Chapter 9 is how you control microorganisms in the environment. Why might that be helpful? Yeah, remember that when we talked about chapter 14, we did the nosocomial infections, like the health care acquired infections. So obviously in a hospital or nursing home, do you want to sterilize everything and disinfect and clean? And yeah, it's usually a really good idea. So this is kind of ways we control microorganisms in the environment, both with like keeping the environment clean, but also if we grow them in the lab. So a couple definitions you'll need to know. You need to know the difference between an antiseptic and a disinfectant. That's very important. So who knows the difference between an antiseptic and a disinfectant? I help you guys out a little because I know it's a cold, frosty St. Patrick's Day. Is it St. Patrick's Day? Mm-hmm. Okay, I wore green. I was like, I hope it's St. Patrick's Day. I grabbed my only green shirt out of the closet. It came in. They're both chemicals that kill microorganisms. So both an antiseptic and a disinfectant are chemicals that can kill microorganisms. But there's a difference in which one you apply where.
Antiseptic on living tissue.
Yes. So an antiseptic is a chemical that will kill microorganisms that's safe to use on living tissue like skin. So like a 70% alcohol pad, like at the hospital, you sanitize somebody's skin. Or that orange beta iodine they use before surgery on the patient's skin to sterilize their skin. Those are examples of antiseptics. So what's a disinfectant? A disinfectant is a chemical that kills microorganisms, but it's too strong to use on living tissue. Would you want to put Clorox bleach on your skin? No. But you could mix Clorox bleach with water and use it to clean a hallway in the hospital. So that would be like your really harsh, like bleaches, bases, 95% alcohol. would be a disinfectant. That's basically a rubbing alcohol. So just remember, an antiseptic is a chemical that kills microorganisms but is safe to use on living tissue. A disinfectant is a chemical that kills microorganisms, but you do not want to use it on living tissue. It's typically only good for cleaning the environment. Now, question. Can the same chemical potentially be both?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
Dilution.
Concentration, yes. So this is an important teaching point. You can use the same chemical as an antiseptic or a disinfectant. It just depends on the concentration. And probably the easiest example of that is alcohol or ethanol. 70% concentration, it's an antiseptic. That's the little alcohol pads. We even use them in labs sometimes. That they use to clean your skin before they start an IV or draw blood or what have you. But what's 95% concentration alcohol? That's a disinfectant. So that essentially would be rubbing alcohol. That's actually the same alcohol we use as a decolorizer for the gram stain and all that. It would be 95%. You technically probably wouldn't want to put this on your skin. I mean, it's not the worst disinfectant, but probably irritate your skin. So you just want to use 95% alcohol, like to clean a desk or to sterilize equipment. This is what they used to use in the old days to clean surgical equipment before they had autoclaves and things like that. So that's basically the teaching point is the same chemical can technically be an antiseptic or a disinfectant. It just depends on the concentration. And that's not just true for alcohol. This would be true for iodine is another good example. You have beta iodine, which is like less than 1% iodine. That's that orange stuff they put on you before surgery. But then you have a stronger dose of iodine, like the iodine tablets you put in water to kill like Giardia and stuff. So once again, concentration separates if it's an antiseptic and disinfectant. So just please know those two definitions. Aseptic really means the same thing as sterile, in my opinion. It means free from microorganisms. So if you have an aseptic or a sterile environment, you do not have any microorganisms there. What's pasteurization?
Heat for a short time to lower the amount of...
Correct. So pasteurization, which is still named after Louis Pasteur, 200 years later, is basically heating food products to kill microorganisms. And if you do this for milk and dairy products and some fruit products, you'll get rid of probably 98, 99% of the microorganisms, and the food won't spoil as quickly, especially if you refrigerate it. It doesn't stay good forever, but stays good a lot longer than if you didn't pasteurize it. Okay, so those are some definitions you definitely need to know. Now, how do these antimicrobial agents work? Usually they work in one of two methods. Usually they either disrupt the cell wall, they disrupt the plasma membrane, or they denature proteins. So if you disrupt the cell wall or you disrupt the plasma membrane of microorganism, what's going to happen to the microorganism?
Osmotic forces.
It's going to die from osmotic forces. But you can also denature the proteins, and that would kill a microorganism. What does it mean to denature a protein? You basically destroy the chemical bonds holding the protein together. And that can be from chemicals, or that can be from extreme heat. Think when you fry an egg, what are you technically doing? You're technically denaturing the proteins in the egg yolk, and that's where the egg yolk turns white, basically. And once you fry an egg, can you unfry it? No, it's a good teaching point. Once you denature a protein, there's no renaturing it. It's pretty much done for. That's the other way we kill a lot of microorganisms. Now, we're talking about microorganisms in general. They're sort of a continuum. You get some that are easier to kill and some that are really hard to kill. So like viruses with an envelope. What's an envelope? That's the fake plasma membrane. They're actually pretty easy to kill. They're hard to detect, but they're actually easy to kill once you do kill them. Gram-positive bacteria are usually a little easier to kill than gram-negatives. This should be no surprise to anybody. What are the two hardest things to kill? Prions and endospores. So those are the most resistant. Endospores, you actually have to use like sodium hydroxide, which is a really strong base, in an autoclave to kill. And prions, the only thing that kills prions is cremation. You usually have to get the flamethrower out, literally. That's the only thing that'll take out a prion as of now. Now, as I mentioned, in Japan, they're working on a prion vaccine, but it's still experimental. In Europe, they're working on an enzyme that supposedly you could inject in an IV and it would kill the prions. So that's still experimental, which means Europe will get it 30 years before we get it, is what that basically means. But eventually, we'll have a treatment for it, but as of now, we do not. Okay. Now, besides chemicals, what are some other methods we use to control microorganisms? Yeah, these are what are called physical methods of microbial control. So if you look, I think a couple pages in your handout, maybe, these are physical methods of microbial control. And one of them is temperature manipulation. And obviously, heat is probably the most common and the most traditional, especially moist heat. What's that mean? Heat plus water. So why would heat kill microorganisms? Well, a lot of reasons. It would denature their proteins. It would disrupt their plasma membranes. It would disrupt their nucleic acids. So what's the old-fashioned way of sterilizing stuff?
Boiling
it. Yeah, in worst case scenario, boiling is still actually pretty effective. So if you're camping in the woods, you want to sterilize like your eating utensils, boiling them for at least 15 minutes is actually a pretty good way to go. So moist heat methods basically means heat plus water. And it's very good to disinfect, sanitize, sterilize, pretty much anything. And it denatures proteins and destroys the plasma membranes of the microorganisms. Now, the three methods you should know are boiling, autoclaving, which is kind of the gold standard. I'll talk about what autoclaving means. And we already mentioned pasteurization, which is basically boiling food products so you kill most of the germs in the food products. How long should you boil something? At least 15 minutes. Write that down. 15 minutes is the magic time frame. So if you're camping this summer, and you remember Dr. D's awesome, wonderful microbiology class, and you decide you have to drink some water from the local river, how long should you boil it?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. That will kill the giardia and the bacteria and the algae and anything else that you don't want. You can also throw an iodine tablet in it. But you want to give that iodine tablet at least 15 minutes to kill everything. Or if you're really OCD like Dr. D, you boil it for 20 minutes and throw 3 iodine tablets in there for good measure. Because I've seen giardia infections in the hospital, and they are no fun for anybody. So boiling actually is pretty effective. Boiling will actually kill a lot of bacteria, a lot of fungi. It'll kill protozoa like giardia. Even it will kill most viruses. However, boiling will not kill endospores. It will not kill protozoa in the cyst stage. Remember, protozoa have 2 life cycles. They have a trophozoite stage where they swim around and eat everything. But they also have the cyst stage where they curl up into a hard little ball and they rest. So boiling won't kill that. And there's some viruses that can survive boiling. So boiling is better than nothing. And I'll be honest, up until the 1950s, that's basically how they sterilized most surgical equipment. And it actually worked good most of the time, but not all the time. The better method is autoclaving. Does anyone know what autoclaving is? Has anyone ever used an autoclave machine before? What is it? How would you describe it?
put water in it.
You put water in it,
It's a
and what do you
pressure
do?
cooker,
It's
isn't
like
it?
these packets. They
Mhm.
have like, some of them have like a clear front and a paper backing kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And you put the utensils in it, seal it, and you put them on like a metal tray and put them in it.
Uh-huh.
And then it like steams them kind of. That's what I thought it was doing anyway.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That's exactly what you do. Think of it as a microwave / pressure cooker. Here's kind of a picture of one. So typically what you do is you put the water in there first, and then usually you've sealed up the surgery equipment, the scalpels, or whatever you're trying to sterilize. You put them on top, and you usually like set it, the modern ones, almost like a microwave. You basically heat the water so hot it actually vaporizes and becomes steam, and then it's collected in these pipes and it kind of zaps whatever you're trying to sterilize. So not only does the heat kill microorganisms, but the pressure from the steam. So it's basically moist heat plus pressure. So you're giving kind of a double whammy to any microorganisms. And that's why autoclaving is kind of the gold standard. Pretty much every hospital, every dentist office, every veterinary clinic, if they want to sterilize things, they usually use an autoclave. My dad was a dentist in Norcross, and he had these gigantic, ginormous one that was like this big, and I used to play with them as a kid to get all pissed off. But anyways, nowadays they're about the size of maybe like a microwave. But that's what autoclaving is. And what you do when you autoclave, once again, think of it as a fancy pressure cooker. You're basically putting water to 121 degrees Celsius. That's about 250 Fahrenheit. So you're using about 250 Fahrenheit, which will basically vaporize that water to steam. And then you're hitting whatever you're sterilizing with about 15 pounds a square inch of pressure for 15 minutes. So PSI stands for pounds a square inch. That's how you measure pressure. And once again, 15 minutes, just like with boiling, is the magic time limit. And this is the gold standard. This is how you sterilize most equipment in the hospital, dentist office, veterinary clinics, pretty much anywhere you go where you operate on people or animals. And it works. Autoclaving will kill everything but a prion, basically. Prion is the only thing that can survive autoclaving. So autoclaving is really the gold standard. I would definitely know that. And pasteurization we've already talked about. It's just basically heating up food product, usually milk, ice cream, yogurt, and dairy product, fruit juices. And there's different time periods, but basically you heat them up to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about 5 to 15 minutes. And that kills the majority of the microorganisms in the food product. And once again, the food product won't stay good forever, but if you refrigerate it, it'll stay good for several weeks rather than just maybe 3 days. So that's the purpose of pasteurization. All right. What is dry heat? Dry heat is heat without water. This is basically incineration or cremation. And this is what we do to the prions. When I mentioned that patient who had the prion disease at Tulane, my alma mater, they took everything from that operating room, and literally the hazmat guys came in from the CDC, bagged it up, and sent it to the nearest crematorium. And that's basically what you have to do. Anything that came in contact with the prion has to be cremated. That's the only thing we found that kills prions. And I love this line here. This is my favorite line in the whole chapter. Incineration is the ultimate means of sterilization. That is true. If it's a pile of ash, it's probably not going to infect you. So worst case scenario, you can always burn something. And that would definitely kill it. So that would be a dry heat method. Now we're going to kind of go to the other end of the spectrum. What do we do to prevent like our food from growing microorganisms? You keep it cold if it's susceptible, like milk and yogurt and ice cream and meat and cheese. Because what happens when you refrigerate stuff? You slow down the metabolism, growth, and reproduction of potential microorganisms. So refrigeration halts the growth of most pathogens. Doesn't prevent them forever, but usually you can keep meat and stuff in there at least a couple weeks or so, rather than just like a day or two. And freezing works even better. My brother's got deer meat frozen probably 2 years ago. Yeah, I know that's a little much, but yeah, he's an interesting person. But yeah, freezing, you even can keep something longer. Because, most pathogens, well, pretty much all pathogens, except for prion, of course, won't survive freezing. Another physical method is desiccation, which is a fancy word for dehydration. So why would that kill microorganisms? Pretty much every microorganism needs water, even bacteria. So if you dehydrate something, which is desiccation is the fancy word for dehydration, that will basically not allow for microbial growth. How do you think we came up with beef jerky and dried fruits, say, 120 years ago, before your great-grandparents had refrigerators and freezers and stuff? It wasn't for, good hiking snacks. It was basically survival in the winter. If you wanted to have meat for the winter, you either had to smoke it, salt it, or dehydrate it. And dehydration, basically, beef jerky was to keep the meat good for the winter. Same thing with dried fruits. It was the same principle. If you didn't want your fruit to go bad over the winter, you either had to put a whole bunch of sugar on it or dry it out. So that's how we got dried fruit and beef jerky. Basically, it was from necessity. But now, of course, we still have the good little snacks and all that. But the original reasoning was back then they didn't have refrigeration or freezing methods. So drying something out or dehydrating it was a good way to prevent it from getting infected by microorganisms. Filtration. Who has a water filter at their house? Yes, always a good thing. Why do filters work? Well, the reason filters work, and this is a good teaching thing, most filters that we use for purification are made of carbon. So the majority of your filters are made from carbon. Why would carbon be something good for filtration? Who remembers your basic chemistry?
It likes to bond with everything.
Yeah, remember, carbon only has 4 electrons in its valence shell. So it loves to form chemical bonds with pretty much anything it comes close to. This is CH4, which is methane gas, just to give you an example. So carbon only has 4 electrons in its outermost shell, so it will bind to like anything that comes remotely close to it. That's why it makes such a good filter. So if you have filters made of carbon, they will bind to all the bacteria, all the algae, all the protozoa, all the nasty stuff. So that's why pretty much all your filters, with few exceptions, are carbon-based. Who's heard of a life straw? Who has a life straw? I got one. One of my former students who's an EMT gave me one as a joke. If you don't know what a life straw is, it's this plastic straw about this long. And it's got 4 carbon filters in it. And supposedly you can take the nastiest water and drink it, and by the time it gets to your mouth, it's like this pure, sweet water. I've not tried it. And I'm not going to unless we have an apocalypse and I have to. But there's a TikTok video of some lady down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. The water's all muddy and nasty, and she's drinking it with life. So, oh, it tastes wonderful, and shows how it's nice and clean by the time. But the only reason that would work in theory is because you have like 1, 2, 3, 4 carbon filters. So by the time the water got through all that, it would probably collect most of the bacteria, the algae, protozoa, stuff in the water. So filtration is pretty common. I don't know if I would try it personally, but in the class, if you go to Lake Notley and drink the life straw, how's that? I may or may not take the filters out, but I'm joking. I did that one year, and it was like, oh, I'll do it. No, not really. Don't want you to get Giardia. But that's why most of your filters are based on carbon. This kind of also is a teaching point. What do you give to somebody in the ER if they overdosed on something? Charcoal. Why? Because liquefied charcoal is pretty much pure carbon, so it's going to attach to and absorb any toxins in their stomach. We used to do that all the time if somebody overdosed on medication or accidentally overdosed on something.
I was gonna say Narcan.
What's that?
Narcan.
My answer was gonna be Narcan.
Well, yeah, that was long before Narcan came out. That's historically what you did. So carbon filtration is another method you can control microorganisms in the environment, and is very important. Osmotic pressure. If you manipulate osmotic pressure, it will of course kill bacteria and fungi and other protozoa. And honestly, this is where high concentrations of salt or sugar will inhibit the growth of most food. Of most pathogens on food. Because what are you doing? Let's say you have meat and you don't have access to a refrigerator or freezer. Your great-grandparents probably had to do this back in the day. Why would they put salt on meat? Because they knew it would stay good longer. They didn't really know the science per se. They just knew as a fact, you put a whole bunch of salt on the meat, it stays good longer. Well, what they were doing, they were creating a hypertonic solution on top of the meat. And what happens in a hypertonic solution? Usually cells will dry out because the water will leave the cytoplasm of the cell and want to go out to kind of neutralize the salt in the environment, and the cell will shrivel up and die. And granted, bacteria are a little harder to kill because they have a cell wall, but if you put enough salt, you eventually will kill them if you have a high enough hypertonic concentration. So salt, high concentrations, will kill bacteria and fungi on meat products. You wouldn't want to salt your fruits. That's where sugar, like candy yams, came out with, basically. Is they didn't want to put salt in the fruit because it would taste nasty, so they said, hey, let's try sugar. Sugar, if you put enough, it does the same thing. It creates a hypertonic solution that will kill most bacteria and fungi because they won't survive a hypertonic environment. So once again, manipulating the environment, this time by osmotic pressure, to control or eliminate the growth of microorganisms. Our great-grandparents are actually pretty smart. You know, this is how they did it back in the day. Okay. So these are the physical methods of microbial control you should be familiar with. Moist heat like boiling, autoclaving, pasteurization, dry heat like incineration, but also refrigeration, which inhibits the growth of pathogens, freezing, desiccation, which just means dehydration, filtration with carbon-based filters, and osmotic pressure by using salt or sugar. Basically, you're creating a hypertonic environment, and pathogens will not survive. So understand these, because this is how we basically protect things from microorganisms in the real world. But now you can also use chemicals, and chemicals, we're kind of going back to the antiseptics and the disinfectants. And once again, an antiseptic is a chemical that kills microorganisms that's safe to use on living tissue. A disinfectant is a chemical that kills microorganisms that's too harsh for living tissue, but you can use it like on a table or on equipment or a desk or something to sanitize. Phenol is the original disinfectant, but we no longer use it because it's really so strong. Does anyone remember who first used phenol to sterilize surgical equipment?
Lister.
Dr. Joseph Lister. Yes, remember all his patients were dying from post-operative gangrene infections. So he started soaking his scalpels and stuff in phenol, and the rate of post-infections went down like 99%. Patients lived. Of course, they fired him because he didn't ask permission to do that, which is, politics have always been part of medicine. But phenol works by disrupting proteins and plasma membranes. We don't use this much anymore. This is actually not true. And the reason is, this is the understatement of the century. It has a disagreeable odor and side effects. They almost killed everyone in my med school class by accidentally exposing us to phenol. That's a true story. You know how bad formaldehyde smells?
Oh, yeah.
Multiply that times 20, that's phenol. That's how bad. And what I mean is with our cadavers in med school, they were supposed to be embalmed with like 75% formaldehyde, 25% phenol. One year the lab got it wrong and they put 75% phenol and 25% formaldehyde. We opened up those cadavers. We were like running out of the room, coughing and gagging and sneezing, and like everybody almost like died. Yeah, that's a true story.
And then those cadavers just go to waste? Now you can't use them?
Yeah, now you can use them. They had to be cremated
Wow.
because, yeah,
That'd be
somebody in the
my
lab apparently didn't
Don't
take their
eat them.
chemistry seriously and got the numbers reversed. But literally, we were all like out in the hallway, like gasping and crying. Well, I wasn't because I was a man, but you know, okay, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. It's like breathing in fire. I can't describe it. Of course, nowadays we probably could have sued for millions of dollars. I'd be in a yacht somewhere right now. But back then they're like, okay, we'll cut off, you know, $500 of tuition next semester or something. Oh, thank you, that's so generous, you know, kind of deal. But yeah, so long story short, we don't use phenol anymore because it is nasty. It can really make people sick. It was historically the first disinfectant, the one that Dr. Lister used to disinfect surgical equipment. So historically it has importance, but we no longer use it.
Wonder how they stood it back then, with no mask or anything
You
like
must
have
have been
now.
a tough person, I don't know, but or else they diluted it and watered it down was probably the other
So they
answer.
don't use it at all anymore?
Not unless you want lawsuits from all your patients with asthma and COPD, because they would probably definitely get sick. But to answer your question, they probably diluted the heck out of it. And finally they just decided, you know what, it's just not worth the liability. And there's newer, better options out there. But to answer your question, no, they probably wouldn't use it anymore. Yeah, so it's a nasty little guy. This is what we use more often. And we use alcohol. Now, this is not the alcohol you drink, obviously. This would be ethanol. And this could be either an antiseptic or disinfectant. So what dose would alcohol be an antiseptic? 70. So about 70% concentration. It's a really good antiseptic, and that's what's in those little alcohol pads you use, you know, to clean someone's skin before you draw blood or start an IV. Now, if you use 95% alcohol, which is essentially rubbing alcohol, then it's more of a disinfectant. You would use that to basically clean equipment or clean a table. You ideally would not want to use rubbing alcohol on your skin, even though I've seen people do that, but it's not usually recommended. Halogens are like iodine and chlorine. These are disinfectants. They work by denaturing the proteins of microorganisms, but they're too strong, with an exception, usually to use on living tissue. So like a swimming pool, usually use bromine or chlorine to clean. Iodine tablets, you know, once again, take those when you go camping and they'll kill pathogens in the water. Now, there's an exception to the rule. Iodine, if used in a very low concentration, like less than 1%, you get betadine, which is the orange stuff they rub on you before surgery. So iodine is the exception in this family. Iodine can either be an antiseptic or a disinfectant, because betadine is extremely common. If you've ever seen surgery performed or had it, they rub that little, they take a little foamy brush and they rub the orange stuff on your skin. You guys seen that? Yeah, that's betadine. It's like less than 1% iodine, but it's really good at killing pretty much most germs. So, yeah, it was actually really cool. I like scary movies, but my wife won't watch them, so I stay up to like after midnight and watch them. And there was one recently about a zombie apocalypse, and this doctor actually was orange. I was like, why is this dude orange? He actually took betadine and covered his skin because he's like, most viruses can't survive betadine. I'm like, that's brilliant. So if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I'm like stacking up on betadine. You see Dr. D, I'm just going to look like a carrot. I'm just going to be orange. Yeah, exactly. I look like the Oompa Loompas. But it actually would work. I was like, oh my God, somebody actually studied the science That's actually brilliant. That actually would. So I'm not joking. If there's ever an apocalypse of the virus, you better get as much betadine and just make yourself look like an Oompa Loompa, and you actually would survive. So I'm still like, that's like a month ago. I was like, oh my God, that is so brilliant.
Start stocking up now.
I'm looking on Amazon. And Timo, will you send me some like
Betadine
10
in
gallons
bulk?
of betadine, please?
They'll be like, what is he up to?
Yeah, exactly. Get your coupon. Exactly. I'm like,
Spin the
all
wheel
right.
for your vat of betadine.
Exactly. I'll just have a big bathtub in the basement or something. But no, that actually would work. So, see, science. All right. Oxidizing agents. This would be like ozone or hydrogen peroxide. Now, let me do a little disclaimer, because hydrogen peroxide historically has been both an antiseptic and a disinfectant. I remember when I was camping with a little kid, as a little kid, if you accidentally cut yourself, where they took like, either alcohol, if it was my dad, or if it was my mom, it was hydrogen peroxide, and you basically put it on the cut, it would kill germs. ER docs are a little on the fence about that. I think what they've decided, if somebody cuts themselves, you can apply hydrogen peroxide one time as the initial antiseptic if you have nothing else, but you wouldn't want to repeatedly use it, because if you use it repeatedly, eventually it would actually harm like healing tissue. So hydrogen peroxide is one of those weird ones. It's kind of on the fence. It's actually an antiseptic and a disinfectant. It's usually used as a disinfectant more now, but you could technically use it as an antiseptic one time, but you wouldn't want to use it more than once. And it's kind of weird for me, because I just remember as a little kid, that was pretty much the gold standard. You scraped your knee, your mom took some hydrogen peroxide and told you to shut up and stop crying.
You just watch it bubble.
Well, I mean, my brother, not me. But they put it on your knee, and it would kill most germs. But I think what ER docs and some of the surgeons say, you wouldn't want to do that like repeatedly over several days, because eventually it would actually start harming more than helping. So it's good for a one-time dose for antiseptic. After that, it's a disinfectant. Ozone is what we use to purify some drinking water. And you can also use ozone to sterilize some equipment. So it's another one that we sometimes use. They used to have like ozone-like systems to clean CPAP machines that patients use, like for sleep apnea. Problem is, some patients are actually allergic to ozone, so you got to be a little careful with that. All right, surfactants are basically your soaps and detergents. And they do a very good job of disinfecting, because most microorganisms cannot survive, soap or detergents, because they mess with surface tension of the plasma membrane and osmotic forces, and they disrupt the cellular membranes. Now, one of the more stronger ones they use, and this is in your handout, are called quaternary ammonium compounds. What they basically do, they take ammonia, which is CH3, and they actually add an extra hydrogen, and it becomes what's known as ammonium. So they actually make it a stronger base, because ammonia is a pretty strong base. It's probably got a pH of about 13 on the pH scale. But if you add an extra hydrogen to it, it'd probably have a pH of like 15, or 14 is the max. So it'd be even a stronger base. So this would definitely disrupt cellular membranes of pathogens and kill them by osmotic forces. So that's why they're called quaternary ammonium compounds. Quaternary means 4, because you have 4 hydrogens added instead of 3. So think of it basically as ammonia on steroids. Well, ammonia itself is probably 12 to 13, so this would definitely be 14 plus. So this would be about as basic as you can get. Now, the most common, or actually I'll say probably the most effective chemical from that, and this is in your handout, and I'll write this out in bigger letters so you guys can read. It's what's called benzalkonium chloride. This is one of these ammonium compounds. You basically took ammonia, but you added an extra hydrogen and came out with an NH4 or ammonium compound. Most of you have probably used this. And this is another one that can be an antiseptic or disinfectant depending on the concentration. If it's less than 1% concentration, it's betadine. Anyone heard of betadine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually an antiseptic they used to use in hospitals and little pads. It's actually superior to alcohol. It's much more effective at killing germs than alcohol, but we don't use it anymore. You know why? Too expensive. Yeah, so it's basically, but I actually have a bottle of betadine spray I got from Walgreens in the lab, and it's, you use it for cuts or scrapes. It's actually much more effective than alcohol. It's just hospitals don't use it because alcohol is real cheap. If you use it at, we'll say, more than, I think it's 10 to 15% concentration, it's actually a disinfectant. Anyone want to take a guess which one?
Lysol.
Lysol. Yeah, it's actually the active ingredient in Lysol. So once again, it kind of shows you the same chemical can be an antiseptic or a disinfectant. Once again, just depending on the concentration. So if you have benzalkonium chloride, this really strong super base, if you have less than 1%, it's betadine. It's an excellent antiseptic. Use it on your skin, would kill pretty much any germ but a prion. Or if you have it about 10 to 15% in aerosol spray or a pad, it's Lysol. It's a really good disinfectant, but you wouldn't want to use it on your skin. This became prominent with COVID-19. You guys remember all the videos of people like, somebody read Lysol will kill COVID-19, so people started eating Lysol pads and rubbing it on their skin. And yeah, this is a real thing. I remember watching that.
Or
Oh my
buying
God,
it
I
up.
can't believe they did
Couldn't
that.
get any.
You should never eat this, I'll put it that way. But the sad thing is, if they had, you could just take betadine. And betadine, they sell it in spray bottles at Walgreens for like $6. If you were that worried, you could spray yourself with betadine, and COVID-19 would be unlikely to infect you. I won't say impossible, it would be unlikely. But just because we don't educate the population, which is the CDC's fault. Oops, I said that out
How would
loud.
they put in a nose spray? Betadine?
There might be. That's possible. I know they have it in a topical spray you can get, or they have it in the little pads like an alcohol pad, but they might have it as a nose spray as well. But it's a really good antiseptic. It's actually much better. Like they've done head-to-head studies between betadine and alcohol, and betadine cleans alcohol's clock every time. So it's a shame because my mom was a nurse at Emory in like the 70s and the 80s through the 90s. And up until the late 80s, they used betadine pads, not alcohol pads. Then the wonderful, HMOs came in and said, oh, that's too expensive. We don't care if patients die. Let's get alcohol pads. And that's literally what they did. And that's why every hospital uses alcohol instead of betadine. So, but if you can find betadine, I recommend you have it for your own personal use because it's excellent as far as killing germs. And it's very safe to use on the skin. Remind me, I'll show you the bottle I bought at Walgreens, but it's in the lab. So, but once again, at less than 1%, it's a good antiseptic. At 10 to 15%, it's a good disinfectant. Lysol. You would not want to put Lysol on your skin. That's what people were doing during COVID, and I was like, somebody should have said something on TV, but they did not. So, yeah, do not eat Lysol. Do not spray it on your skin. It's a really bad idea. You put betadine on your skin till the cows come home, that's fine, but you would not want to use Lysol for that. Yeah. Yeah, look it up on TikTok. Look up the people eating the Lysol pad. I'm not going to get COVID-19. I'm thinking, you're going to get a really bad tummy ache or throwing up, one or the other. All right, so definitely know this one, benzalkonium chloride. And this is in your handout. I think it's the last page of your handout. And it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, people drinking bleach and bleach kills COVID-19. It'll kill you too. Yeah, we don't have to worry about it. So that was crazy. Heavy metals. I'll be honest, the only one of these we typically use is silver nitrate. In a lot of doctors' offices, hospitals, you'll see these little dropper bottles, and they'll have 1% silver nitrate. These are good for puncture wounds. So if a patient steps on, like, say, a rusty nail, you'd probably give them a tetanus shot if they haven't had one. But you actually would put silver nitrate in the wound. It actually will go deep enough to kill any potential microorganisms deep in the wound. So 1% silver nitrate's really good because it denatures the proteins of any potential pathogen. We also use this to prevent blindness in babies. This is kind of sad, but I actually saw this during my OB-GYN rotation in med school. If you have a baby that's born through a vaginal birth, somebody comes to the ER and their baby's basically coming out, but then you find out that the mother has gonorrhea or syphilis, you have to put silver nitrate in the baby's eyes or the baby will go blind, basically. And we had to do that. We delivered a baby that was literally in the ER and then found out afterwards that mom had syphilis. We had to put the silver nitrate drops in its eyes so it didn't go blind. It was fine, but it's just, that's the only really two times you use silver nitrates for puncture wounds or for babies to make sure they don't get blind from an STI if they had a vaginal birth. Copper is really good at killing algae, so if you go into environmental science, they use copper all the time to kill algae, like swimming pools and stuff like that. So those would be your heavy metals. Aldehydes I'm not really going to talk about because we don't use these for disinfectant anymore. They're too toxic. So the classic one would be formaldehyde, and we just use that for embalming. Like those fetal pigs and stuff you get to dissect in A&P, but also embalming cadavers. Formaldehyde will prevent things from breaking down. It will also kill germs, but it's too toxic, just too many side effects. Okay. Supposedly enzymes are going to be the future against killing microorganisms. This is all experimental. But once again, Europe, they're trying to come up with prion-zyme. That's the name of it, what they're calling it. It's going to be an enzyme that supposedly will kill prions. They haven't made it yet. They haven't found one that works yet. I don't know who's brave enough to try, if you remember how deadly prions are. So somebody out there is trying. I mean, they got House over there on Viking and trying it or something. But somebody's crazy enough and brave enough to try it. But eventually they're going to come up with enzymes that supposedly will kill germs, including prions. Okay. Antimicrobial drugs we already talked about with chapter 10, so I'm not going to go over all those again. But once again, the chemical methods of microbial. Phenol historically was the original disinfectant. We don't really use it anymore. Alcohol and iodine are probably the two most common. So alcohol, once again, at low dose is an antiseptic, at a high dose is a disinfectant. Iodine, kind of the same thing. At a low dose, it's an antiseptic. A high dose is a disinfectant. Hydrogen peroxide can be used either way. Your surfactants are your soaps and detergents, and that would include the benzoaconium chloride, which can be either betadine, which is an antiseptic, or Lysol, which is the disinfectant. So that goes over what we talked about. There is a test that's pretty much the same as a Kirby-Bauer test, but if you're doing it for disinfectants and antiseptics instead of like antibiotics, you call it the Kelsey-Sykes test. I'm not going to test you on that, but it's literally the same principle. You take a Petri dish, you streak it with a pathogen, and you put one disinfectant on one side, the other disinfectant on the other side, and you see which one has a bigger zone of inhibition. And betadine has kicked alcohol's butt every test they've ever done with that. So if you had like a Petri dish of, say, like E. coli, and you put like a little bit of tissue with betadine on it over here, and a little bit of tissue with 95% alcohol over here, Actually, it'd be 70% because we're testing antiseptics. After 2 days, the zone of inhibition of betadine is going to be like this, and alcohol is going to be like that. So betadine is like the superior antiseptic. So if you can get it, I recommend it. So, and with that, guys, that is the end of chapter 9. Woohoo! So, any questions? All right.
I do have a question. When's the test?
Test will probably be next Thursday. So probably what we'll do, or next, what is today? Today's Tuesday? Okay, next Tuesday, excuse me.
Next Tuesday?
Yeah, next Tuesday, so a week from today. So Thursday, we'll review chapter 10, chapter 9, and then your test will be next Tuesday. So that's what we will do. I kept thinking today was Thursday, I was all excited. I was going to go home play in the snow, but I was like, no, wait, it's only Tuesday. So. All right, any other questions?